Kevin McCullough.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Times Square. I am so thrilled to have my next guest. It's been a while since we've spoken with him. He not only served number 45 in office admirably, doing a great job in a very, what would have been probably a very unaccustomed department for him to head up. And yet, when you look at how he dealt with housing and did such a great job, and even in New York, we felt some of the impact of his experience and his oversight here. But he's really, at heart, a man of science. And he's got a brand new book to talk about. I cannot wait to enjoy this conversation with you and him. Please welcome Dr. Ben. Mr. Secretary, welcome back.
Thank you. So good to be with you again. Appreciate it.
You've got a brand new book out. Go ahead and give us the title and the elevator pitch. I'm going to come back to it in a little bit, but I want to make sure that people know what it is.
Well, it's called The Perilous Fight and Overcoming Our Culture's War on the American Family. And of course, we were born in the crucible of war. Our country was. Our freedoms didn't come easily. And we need to fight for them. We're at a point right now where it's dangerous to fight because you'll get canceled or other things will happen to you. But the fact of the matter is you can't be the land of the free if you're not the home of the brave.
That's well said.
This book really talks about what we have to do in order to preserve the freedoms, not only for ourselves, but for those who are coming after us.
We'll pick up on that conversation in a bit. I want to transition to some other things. I cover a lot of health things on my platform, and I think coming out of COVID the last couple of years and all of the debate that there has been around just how we handled almost every aspect of it, you're one of the most accomplished neurosurgeons to ever walk the planet. And I know that as a physician, you didn't really get to serve in that capacity in Mr. Trump's administration, but I know that it's close to your heart and that you still have very strong opinions about what we need to do. It's my feeling that we've probably sacrificed a lot of faith in our medical institutions and particularly our national bodies of leaders. Where are we in Ben Carson's opinion in terms of public health?
Well, we did an enormous amount of damage, obviously, during COVID. In terms of people's trust. And it was just totally inexcusable. When things did come up that might work, like hydroxychloroquine, it was quickly crushed. Ivermectin called horse serum. And yet, if we had been in any way objective, we would have saved hundreds of thousands of lives using those. When you look at something like hydroxychloroquine, the reason that the Western African countries have 94% less COVID than we did is because they take it as an anti-malarial. The reason that Southern India had almost none is because they use ivermectin liberally. But we had a silly rule that said you cannot get an EUA, an emergency use authorization, for a drug or an inoculation unless there's no other viable treatment. So you had to crush all other viable treatments and denigrate them in order to get the EUA, which is completely ridiculous. It should be just the opposite. When you have a pandemic going on, you should go down every possible avenue that you have rather than trying to channel everything into one area. So it's going to take a long time. You have people saying, natural immunity is only good for 2 or 3 weeks. Natural immunity is good for years. We've known that for a very long time. We've known that since the days of smallpox and the Civil War. All of a sudden, we don't know it anymore. Those kinds of things really cost us dearly as a society, and it's going to take a good little while before people trust once again in our public health system.
I don't know if we have time because it seems as though the Chinese are intent on continuing exploration around novel viruses. They want to play with these things that use gain of function. There seems to be a lot of desire to experiment and to try to, I don't know, push the Frankenstein envelope as best as I can tell. But Dr. Carson, when it comes to being ready, if another one of these bugs took hold, what's your assessment of where we're at?
Well, we're certainly not going to be ready with the current administration, that's for sure, because no one seems to like to ever take responsibility. They just keep passing the buck to everybody else. Let's hope if there's a different administration soon that they will recognize that we have to deal with the facts, not deal with what's politically expedient, but what are the facts, because the safety of the people is the primary thing. That's one of the real purposes of the government, not to gain political power.
We're speaking with Dr. Ben Carson, who served the Trump administration in the housing department and housing secretary and did a great job. I'm curious, I'm going to go off the health topic for a second. What was your favorite experience serving in that capacity?
Probably getting the finances under control. When I came there, it was a total mess. They had not had an audit for 8 years. It's required that every federal agency have an audit once a year. You couldn't do an audit because there were so many material defects. So getting that under control was a great accomplishment, and it allowed us to get a lot of other things done. And it went from the worst run agency to the best run agency.
I'm hesitant to ask if you have any insight on how it's running since you've left.
So a lot of the things that we started are still in place, but are not being pursued vigorously. Let's put it that way.
Well, I know that, it was probably not an easy assignment, especially for someone who came from the medical field. But do you feel like your background in science gave you an advantage in any way in that position?
Well, it does, in the sense that you learn to make decisions based on facts, based on what the real evidence shows, as opposed to on emotion. And the thing that really helped me was having grown up in dire poverty and seeing the way people formulate their ideals. And I was very hopeful that I would get a lot of support in trying to make people self-sufficient, get them out of poverty. I was a little surprised to find on the Hill, on the other side of the aisle, there were a lot of people who really didn't want to get people out of poverty and want them to be self-sufficient.
Was that the most jarring thing about entering the political arena for you, was just what manipulation is done with the masses by those that are elected?
Yeah. Well, I knew it was a swamp going into it, but I discovered it was actually a cesspool. It's worse than a swamp. But it doesn't mean that we shouldn't be working hard to reverse it, because if we don't, we got a real problem.
Yeah.
And, one of the things that we're doing at American Cornerstone Institute, which I head up now, is Executive Branch for America, teaching particularly young people, college-age people, how the government actually works, so that if they get involved, they can hit the ground running, because most people take a year to get out of the headlights.
Well, and as you can well see, that's a lot of wasted downtime.
Stick around for more of That Kevin. Next, That Kevin Show with Kevin McCullough.